Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. Chad Hyams here, and I'm flying solo. That's right, I'm not really flying solo yet. I ditched Bob and Ben, and it's just me bringing you an amazing interview. So you know we're going to get to the real stuff, not some of those crazy questions Bob likes to ask as we get going. And I want to get right into it for you today, folks. And I want to welcome to our podcast our guest today, Dr. Scott Whiteford. Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Chad, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
All right, Scott, I don't read bio stuff. Our audience knows this, so I'm putting you in the hot seat to introduce yourself. What is it you want our audience to know about you?
Well, that I've worked in the field of strength management theory for 20 years. I've had an opportunity to coach over 2,000 executives on focusing on their strengths and how they can utilize those to develop themselves, bring their team together, understand their team's culture and their organizational culture, and basically how you can have a little bit more fun at work while leading other people.
Okay, I'm in love, right? Because you're hitting on all the words I love hearing in there. I wrote a book. Our audience knows I wrote a book, and one of the chapters is all about developing your strengths and leveraging your weaknesses, right? Because too many people have always said, well, if I just fix my weaknesses, right? So before we even get into the culture, before we get into having more, just take me down that path because, well, even though I might have written about it, you sound like the expert on the topic.
Well, I haven't written a book on it, so I'm still behind you a little bit on that.
Well, you got those letters in front of your name, the D and the R there, that makes you a little bit more of an expert than I in some of these things.
Well, so it's really interesting. I often like to talk to my client partners and my podcast guests about thinking about strengths in a little bit of a different way.
Okay.
First of all, we often talk about knowledge, skills, and experience. And a lot of times when we think of excellence in a particular position, we think of those. And really, that's only half of the issue. So you might think knowledge, skills, and experience, the knowledge you've accumulated on the job. Maybe you're excellent at a certain type of skill, such as stats, or maybe it's finance, or maybe you have 10 years of experience or 20 or 50 years of experience. And we focus a lot on that. And I encourage our listeners to focus on the other half of the equation. And that is the talent and the strengths. So when you think of a great leader, you probably think, oh, somebody who's really articulate, maybe somebody who's has a high level of energy, builds relationships quickly, understands how to be focused and work through projects. That's the part that we focus on. Sometimes we call it soft skills. Now, on half of this equation, knowledge, skills, and experience, I have my leaders focus on areas of deficiency. And if you don't have the right knowledge in a certain area, let's get it for you. If you can't do PowerPoint, let's get it for you. But from a strengths-based perspective on the talent side, just like you said, I want you to focus on what you do really well. If you're great at public speaking, if you're a great podcast host, how can we get you to do more of it? The analogy I like to give is a basketball player by the name of Stephen Curry.
Yeah, now, I think a few people might recognize the name, and Bob's probably very upset he's not here right now to have a conversation about basketball with you.
Well, I don't know how much I know about basketball, but I know about Steph Curry.
That's okay. I don't know much about basketball either. Bob just likes to go on about basketball.
And that's just fine. But as long as the listeners know who Steph Curry is, and if you don't, well, welcome to the 21st century. And if you do, that's excellent, because I'm going to use him as an example.
Perfect.
Steph Curry is 6 feet, 6'1", whatever he is. Relatively short and individual for the NBA. Now, I think we both agree, your listeners would agree, he is an all-star player.
Yes.
Matter of fact, he might even be MVP.
Yes.
And he does some things as a basketball player really well. He shoots three-pointers really well. He passes the ball really well. He reads defenses really well. The areas he doesn't do so well, he doesn't rebound very well. He doesn't block out very well. And he doesn't play in the paint, therefore, with the tall people very well. Now, if we said to him, hey, you're a pretty good basketball player, but you know how you could be even better is focus on those weaknesses. Focus on how to rebound, focus on growing about a foot, and focus on blocking out. Then you'll be a great basketball player. I guarantee the head coach of the Golden State Warriors says, forget all that. I'll have somebody else help you with that. I'll have somebody else compensate. I want you to focus on what you do really well, even if it's only half of being a great basketball player.
It's a great analogy. I mean, staying in the sport, right? If for some reason, audience, you don't know who Steph Curry is, and that's okay if you don't follow basketball or watch ESPN and just catch up. you definitely know who Shaquille O'Neal is, right? Everybody knows Shaq, right?
Yeah.
Same thing. He was almost the exact opposite player of Steph Curry, right? He belonged in the paint, which is that area under the basket. He could out rebound. He could out dunk these guys. He was just a football player on a basketball court. Boy, what would happen though when they fouled him? He went to the foul free throw line and he was like 2% success rate. I mean, something ridiculous. And you can be sure Phil Jackson said, I don't care. Let them all foul out coming after you. You do what you do, big man. And that's how they won so many championships.
It's actually an interesting story about Shaquille O'Neal is that all of the coaches would spend a ton of practice having him practice his free throws, and he could never get above 50%. Maybe he was increasing by 1% or 2%. And you're exactly right. Jackson said, I don't care if you increase 1% or 2%. I don't care if you decrease a couple percent. I want to focus on what you do well. So rather than having 30 minutes of basketball practice focused on free throws, I want them focused on rebounds. So great analogy.
Okay. And folks, we're going to share more basketball analogies, not to put off our non-basketball fan listeners. It's more to piss off Bob for not being here while we can talk basketball stuff. All right. No. So it's about developing our strengths, and it's about finding those strengths in others. So how do we identify our own strengths for those who let our ego maybe get in the way and think, well, I'm really good at this, or we're humble. So we're saying, well, I'm not really that good at it. And then take that one step farther, because we have so many entrepreneurs on our calls. How do they identify in other people what those strengths are going to be, Scott?
So I love entrepreneurs. So for those of you that are not basketball fans, but great entrepreneurs, I love you even more. So welcome. So it's really interesting because we got to focus on how to understand what those strengths are. Now, if you sat down and I sat down and we wrote out the strengths that we thought we had, we might be misinterpreting. We might be not even understanding fully ones that we're missing. And we might even put areas of weakness because we're going to work on those.
Right.
And we can both do that. Not only that, but it's even harder when you bring somebody else in. So if you bring somebody onto your team and you have all day with them, out of maybe 10 of the strengths they have, you'll recognize whether or not they're extroverted. And that's about it. The rest of it, if they're really good at interviewing and they're really extroverted, you're going to leave those interviews thinking, wow, they nailed it. They were awesome. Well, are they highly focused? Oh, yeah, they talked about being focused. Well, are they highly adaptable? Oh, yeah, they talked about being adaptable. The only true way to do it is to go through an assessment of some kind, to go through a hiring assessment that looks at strengths and understands those talents, or to go through one that you can get online. Something like Gallup's Strengths Finder will tell you not job specific and not really for work, but for you as an individual, where are your strengths? Now, I encourage my executives and my leaders, and for that matter, managers and supervisors, to use assessments that are job specific and for working. But that's the idea, is that the only way to truly understand not only the strengths of the team people or the people who report to you, but your strengths is to go through an assessment.
Okay. And Strength Finders is one that probably many of our audience either recognizes the name or is now quickly Googling, right? All I know is I was proud that Woo was not one of mine. I did not want Woo to be one of mine for some reason. I don't remember all of them. I'd have to pull it up. I keep a book behind me, actually, of all my assessments I've ever taken. So Strength Finders is a great one, audience. Check that one out. When it comes to it, here's my thing about assessments, and I want to get your take on it, Scott. Too many people will come to me and say, well, the person's strengths are anybody could do any role. The difference is certain people would excel in a role, or it might be more natural for them. But just because someone doesn't have this strength and you're looking for these 3 strengths doesn't mean they can't do the job still. Is that correct?
It is correct. And it's also an important piece to understand that you can have 2 leaders who are, well, first of all, we should say everybody has strengths and everybody has weaknesses. So if you're out there thinking, oh, I'm that one leader that Scott's never had a chance to work with who has all strengths, I will tell you you're wrong. Everybody has areas of strength and everybody has areas of weakness. Now, we could both be vying for a leadership position, maybe back to basketball coaching, but we could both be vying for a leadership position. You could be a certain type of leader with these strengths over here and a team that's compensating for the areas that are softer. I could be a certain type of leader with strengths that are the opposite of yours, with, again, the team compensating for my weaker areas, and we can both be successful. It's like a basketball coach who's a player's coach, rah, let's get them going, and a basketball coach who's really hard line and sharp elbows. They can both be successful. It's just utilizing those strengths. So I do caution my leaders to say, okay, they have to have these three. They have to be super positive, super persuasive, and highly intellectually curious to be successful in the job. And I'll say, they probably need some of those three, but they don't need all of them. And so let's make sure that when we're evaluating individuals, we understand their strengths and we can understand how they'll be successful in that role.
Okay. And that's a great point. And audience, I want everyone to get that, right? Don't just have 10 people interview for a role by sending you in their Strength Finders report and saying, well, these are the only two I'm meeting with, right? Because there are the intangibles. There is that gut that comes from it. There are ways you might connect. And the same thing, just because someone comes to you and those are their three strengths doesn't mean they're going to be a match. They might be a cultural disaster, even though they're the strengths.
Yes, absolutely. Too often we see folks who seem to have the right knowledge, skills, and experience, maybe have the right strengths, but there's two keys here that they might be missing. And this is really where I place it back on your listeners. One is evaluating the cultural alignment or the fit or the cultural enhancement piece. A lot of times people kind of ignore that, or they don't understand the role that it can play. The second and most important piece is, once they're on your team, how much investment are you putting into them? So if you're just saying, oh my gosh, I worked with Scott at Talent Plus and we use their role specific assessments and they had the right knowledge, skills, and experience. They had the right talent. They had the right cultural enhancement, but they fell apart. My first question to them is, how much time did you take investing in your people? And all too often, leaders don't take enough time investing in their people, investing in those strengths, making them better.
How much time should we invest?
So it's actually worked on a survey and found that leaders, and you can Google these types of things, leaders often will spend a true about 3 to 5% of their time working on their people, like helping them develop, not assigning them tasks, not helping them through the task, but working on their development.
Okay.
The higher you go in an organization, the more time you should be spent on those leaders, the more time you should be spent on the people that report to you. And I've read, I was going to say articles, let's go with opinions, that it could be up to 50%. That you, as a leader, spending 50% of your time developing your team and 50% of your time on vision, on understanding how to move the organization or your team forward. But if you're down in the nitty gritty and you are too concerned about things like knowledge, skills, and experience, then you haven't been leading the right way.
So what I'm hearing you say is, the higher up I go, the more I should be pouring into the people below me, because that's going to be the thing that's going to probably move the needle the most on my team, because they're the ones pouring into the people below them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it gets my message to the bottom a little bit better.
Absolutely. Let's go back to upsetting Bob.
Okay, good. We love that. That's one of my favorite pastimes. It's one of my strengths, probably.
I am developing this as a favorite pastime as well. So let's go back to that. If I take LeBron James, who might be the best basketball player on the planet right now, and I put him on a high school basketball team, and I have them play a professional basketball team tomorrow, that professional basketball team will win by 80, 100 points, but LeBron James will be the best player on the court.
Sure.
The analogy is, if you are excellent at the job you do, the function you do, but you can't get the people below you to rise to your level or above you, preferably, then you're just LeBron James on a high school basketball team playing a professional basketball team. If one of us, Chad, you and I might be pretty good at basketball, I don't know, but if we joined a professional basketball team and the rest of the players were all-stars, we would outperform, even though we're the worst performer on the court. The idea is, the higher you go, as you said, the more you have to develop the people below you and have them develop the people below them, and et cetera.
Okay. So audience, think about how much of your day are you spending pouring into the people who are the level below you, versus how much of the day are you spent in the weeds doing stuff versus how much of the day are you truly spent on vision and moving the organization forward and the big picture stuff that needs to happen. And sadly, it's not going to be 33%. I guarantee it. The thing that drops off more often than not, Scott, I've got to guess, is that pouring into the other people because you're like, I don't have time. I've got to do these things that I have to do.
Yeah. One of my great quotes my great quotes that I enjoy. I didn't actually have this quote. So I'm
giving you credit for the great quote earlier. Are you the LeBron James of your high school team, right? Okay.
I guarantee if any of my high school buddies are listening to this, they will say, absolutely not. But the quote that I really enjoy is the CFO is advocate, or the CEO is advocating for to develop the people. The CFO says simply, we don't have the resources to do it. And so I'm concerned, what if we invest in our people and they leave? And the CEO says, what if we don't invest in our people and they stay?
Yeah. We love that quote. That's we love to remind people of that when they're like, I don't know about this person. We're like, hey, how much do you want to invest? And they leave. What if you don't invest and they stay though? Yeah. Yeah.
It's much worse.
Absolutely. That takes us to the culture of our organization. I think that would segue me into that. So let's talk about building a company culture by design, right? Not just falling into what our culture is. What tips can you give us there? How does hiring people come into developing our culture, et cetera, Scott?
The people create the culture. And that's what's most important. And so as a leader first, and this can be, we can just think of your team. We don't have to think of the whole organization. So if you're entrepreneurial, think of the whole organization. But if you're a leader of a team, we got to think of the team as well. And that is that when we look at the culture, you are defining the culture. So the way you behave will help institute the type of culture that you want. And second, the people you bring on, the people that you have be part of your culture, the more they will define the culture. So to give you kind of a funny example, when I coach leaders, I often ask them these three questions. First, I want you to rank the people on your team from most productive to least productive. So if you have 6 people on your team, most productive, least productive.
Okay.
I want you to rank them most difficult to replace to least difficult to replace. Again, 6 people. And then the third column seems completely arbitrary, but it's amazing how much it works. I want you to rank your people from most positive to most negative to least positive.
Yep. Okay.
Now, of those 3 categories, what percentage of the time do you think I spend on each one of those rankings? The one from most productive, least productive, we spend about 15%. The most difficult to replace to least difficult to replace, maybe 15%. 70% of the time is simply on positivity, simply on culture type of things. And so leaders know it's important. When they get a coach, that's what you're talking about. But yet, if you step back without either, you're thinking, oh, everything must be just fine. And instead, it's really important that you help define your organization, define your culture through your people.
Okay, so culture is not what I say it is. Culture is what my people actually are.
Absolutely.
I can say that we're a giving, donating, caring, loving culture. Yet if my people, me included, obviously in that, but if my people aren't donating, aren't caring, aren't giving kind of people, then it doesn't matter that I'm saying that that's our culture.
Not at all. And you're exactly right. And it's even worse if you say it and then don't live it. The state in the middle of the country, any Missourians that are listening to your podcast, this shout out to you. They have the best license plate in the country. And I'm not going to put you on the spot, Chad, but it is the best license plate in the country. So Missouri, here's one for you. It's the show me state. And I grew up near Missouri. I'm not a Missourian, but I grew up near Missouri. And I always thought it was show me, like be my friend. And at one point I was in college. I was down there. I was talking to some folks and I said, tell me about show me state. It is show me, don't tell me. You tell me to do something, you can go hide.
Yep.
If I want you to show me, and as a leader, you have to be thinking about, am I living up to the Missouri credo of, am I showing my team how to be a leader? Or am I just telling them how I want them to be a leader? Because they're like Missourians. They aren't going to listen if you're not showing, if you're not acting the way that you say you're going to.
I love that, Scott. I had a mentor, a leader in my world for a long time, and what she used to always say is, your actions are so loud, I can't hear what you're saying.
Love that quote.
right?
Put that one, again, that goes right to you, Chad. That is a Chad quote.
No, I'm sure Terry Brinkus, who's the one who said it to me many times, got it somewhere. Otherwise, I'll give her full credit. Yet she used to say that all the time, right? Your actions are so loud, I can't hear what you're saying. And that's what I'm hearing when you're talking about this show me state motto that everybody should start adopting. It's what are your actions actually saying? Forget what your words are trying to tell us.
Exactly. And far too often in the world, well, let me back up. In the world of statistics, for those of you that are stats people out there, attitude, behavior always wins out over attitude. So if you're measuring something on attitude, you can be pretty sure the statistics are telling what you need to. If you're measuring it on behavior, they're going to come out with flying colors because it's the same thing. And so as a leader, as an entrepreneur, especially, and when I work with entrepreneurs, I talk to them a lot about this. You have to define the culture. And Chad, unfortunately, I would go with 99.9% of entrepreneurs are out there thinking about the type of product or service they can deliver. That's what they're passionate about with their entrepreneur ring. But what they should be also thinking about, and what very few think about, is what culture am I developing? What kind of work environment am I developing? Because if you're not focused on that early on, that ship could leave the station, so to speak, before you even have a chance to define your culture.
Okay, trains leave stations, ships leave ports.
Let's do that. Ships and ports, trains and stations. I like it.
There you go. All right. So let's attack that, what you just said, because some people are listening to this episode and they're saying, my culture's a mess.
Yes.
So other than you're fired, right? Because that's not the way. How do I repair, reinvent my culture at my company with the people? Now, some might say, forget it, I don't want to be a part of this, I'm out. Yet, without just cleaning slate and starting over, how do we fix our culture if we're finding it's not where we want it to be?
Absolutely. And let's just go with, you don't even have the option of letting people go. So,
okay,
let's tackle this from a very different standpoint. The very first thing you should do is take seriously the mission, vision, and values that you have. If you're entrepreneurial state and you don't have those, develop them. Hire somebody to come in and whiteboard those with you. Make sure that you have a strong vision, mission, and values that you believe in strongly, and that the people will live to or think about, their North Star, so to speak.
And if you don't have one, folks, we got a bunch of episodes on mission, vision, and value, right? Scroll back through. You might have to go back to season 1, yet start scrolling back. You'll find episodes on mission, vision, value, and we'll be more than happy to bring you a new one if you need it. Just let us know in our Facebook group. All right, keep going.
But it is the first thing and the most important thing. And too many times, I work with teams or organizations that have them in place, but they're super ambiguous and they don't really live them. You've got to live them. You want people that are working for you, not for that paycheck, but for that mission, vision, and values. So they have to be strong. Number 2, you have to believe in them. As the leader, you have to believe them, you have to espouse them, and you have to live them. Again, kind of back to our show me versus tell me. You have to do everything that you've set out to do based on that. The number 3 is then you have to get the folks that are working for you on your team on board. The best way to do that is to help them determine what the mission, vision, values. It's not a democracy. It's still a dictatorship, but have them have input and tell them why you think it's important. Tell them why maybe it's not as important to have it in. And so now you've done 3 things. You've created mission, vision, values that are sustainable, that are actionable, that you believe in. Second, you are espousing them. And third, you're including others and bringing them into the fold, so to speak. The problem is it's not going to change everything. It's better to do that when you're an entrepreneur or your team is young or there's some turnover or whatever, and bring in the people who will then live that mission, vision, and values, because in the end, they're the ones that are going to carry the flag.
Okay, so I'm in an interview with somebody. Should I be going over my mission, vision, values as part of my interview process? I mean, obviously the interview, I should be getting to know them, not necessarily selling them on me. Yet if they're that important and they're going to create my culture, do I need to make sure they come up in the interview process?
Yes, organically, and not by you saying, our mission, vision, and values are great. Don't you think they're great? Why, yes, they're great. Well, thank you. I knew you'd agree with me. It is instead, and a lot of times I talk to my leaders about this, asking questions, asking good questions in interviews. So let's say you have the resume, so you know their knowledge, skills, and experience. You have an assessment, preferably a Talent Plus assessment, but an assessment on them so you understand their strengths. And then it is, what are you doing to see if they align with your mission, vision, values? A lot of times I have my leaders ask very broad questions looking for very specific answers. So don't lead the witness, because if you lead the witness, they will follow and you will be convinced. So instead, perhaps one of the values is, let's just go, we are family. Let's say that's number one value in your organization.
Okay.
And you say to the candidate that's coming in, and let's say it's not widely publicized, and you ask, okay, what's most important to you with this organization while joining this organization? And then be looking for, is that person pointing to those values? If they're saying the number one and most important thing is that we meet payroll, that's probably the worst possible response. It's important, but it's probably the worst possible response.
Sure.
But if you're talking about how they can accomplish tasks, or how they're a team player, or whatever it is, these kind of ambiguous, benign types of responses, you're not going to get the type of individual. If they come in and say, I want to work for an environment where we consider ourselves family. Okay, they're more likely to be a good fit for your organization, rather than you say, don't you think it's important that we're all part of a family? Oh, absolutely we are. So,
okay. So it's know your mission, vision, and values so well that you can be listening for those key words to almost be said back to you in the conversation.
Without leading the witness, and maybe even making the questions, feel free to make them ambiguous. You don't have to ask questions that are specific, because you're going to get specific answers that they know you're looking for. Instead, a more ambiguous, broad question.
Or go crazy like the rumors of Google interviews of stuff like, if you were a color, what color would you be? Right. And seeing where that takes them and how it gets back to you. Okay. You threw it away in there, Scott. And I don't want you to just throw it away in there. You talked about getting an evaluation, and then you talked about Talent Plus. So that's another strength evaluation of people. How do they get that one that you're behind, that you just want to humbly not? I'm going to put you on the spot. Where do they go? What website if they want to look into your assessment?
Sure. There's a couple ways to do this. The first thing is they can always go to www.talentplus.com. It's a strength management. We're a strength management organization, but we're role specific. So we're focused on roles and how people in those roles can be successful. Again, strength management. So we're all about, once you understand that, how can you develop those? We can actually, for your listeners, I can offer for them to go through a very short assessment and see the results, see where your strengths are and how you can utilize those strengths. So it's actionable. And what they would have to do is they can just reach out to me via LinkedIn, and I can provide them that link. Or better yet, Chad, I'm going to put you on the spot. I can give you, and perhaps in the podcast notes, we can put the link and they can just go in and click on it. They don't even have to contact me, but I'm welcome to connect with them. Just LinkedIn, Scott Whiteford, but I'll give you the link and perhaps you can put it in the notes. So we'll make sure,
folks, here's where it's going to be for sure. It's going to be in our Facebook group, right? Yeah. So if you're a listener, come on into the Facebook group. That's Win, Make, Give. I will make sure that we post this. And here's the thing. If you go take it, we want to know in the comments some strengths that came off that. We want you to share it with all of us so we can hear, because, well, we might be looking for somebody for an opportunity and be looking for certain strengths. So come back into the Facebook group. I'll have that link posted from Scott, and we'll share that with each and every one of you. Okay, Scott, before we move on, one of the last things I want to talk about with you is just employee engagement, interaction, all that kind of stuff a little bit more. Interviewing is important. Mm-hmm. And interviewing is a skill, right? There are some people that just don't know how to. There are some people who just make a mess of it. Then you get people like Diane Sawyer. They know how to interview, right? You get Oprah. She knows how to interview and pull that stuff out of you that you don't want to even share. And some of our people are anywhere on the spectrum. What's the single best question they should all start adding to their interview process to help them interview better, even if it's the only one good question they ask along the whole way?
Okay, so I'm going to answer it a couple different ways. A little bit of a cop out,
Okay.
but thinking of questions like we just said that focus on your mission, your vision, your values, but at a very broad stance. Those are great questions to ask. I like to know a question I often like is: have you ever had an opportunity to make a company, a team, or an individual grow, and what did that look like? I love to ask about strengths and how they utilize them, but also weaknesses. So be looking for weaknesses. Well, one of the things that I often hear is my greatest weakness is that I'm just too awesome.
Sure. Yeah.
Well,
I care too much.
Care too. I just work too hard. Be looking for multiple weaknesses and what they do about those. Not that they have to improve them all, but how do they, because we all have them. So how do they say, okay, we have these, but we need to figure out ways to help other people on the team grow those, or not grow them, but work on them to complement you.
Okay. Good. Okay. So gang, there you go, right? Make it one that's focused on your mission, vision, values, that kind of, without giving it away, sees how they answer that. Make it one that's asking about strengths or asking about weaknesses. And if they're sitting across the table from me at an interview and every weakness they have is I'm too awesome, I care too much, okay, they're full of crap. There's the red flag right there when they give you that horrible cliche weakness answer, because they have them. Find them. Okay. So last thing let's dump into, as we've been going through all this stuff, employee engagement, right? We already talked about the culture a little bit, and obviously if the culture is good and the culture is strong, then employees are probably engaged. Yet there's more to it than probably just that.
Yeah, there is. First of all, the most important thing with employee engagement is that you do them. So make sure you're doing them. B, okay, once you do them, make sure that you understand the areas that where there are opportunities to increase employee engagement, and include employees in how we're going to do this. You want to improve culture? Here's how you can do it. Include employees in how we're going to do it. And then most important, put action steps behind them and actually follow through with them. If you do all of the steps without following through, it will be worse than just not having done it at all. So make sure you do them, make sure you put actions around the deficiencies, and then make sure you follow up. And you can even use the next employee engagement as your benchmark. So you can see, did we improve? But like I said, the worst is if you don't do anything, then people won't trust what you're saying. People won't trust you.
Okay, so you're talking about employee engagement, and that's like an employee review opportunity. Do you have a model that you follow? Like, are you just using the SWOT concept? Do you have some other, or is it just, hey, let's have a look. Where are you? Where should you be? What's an employee engagement meeting look like with you?
Yeah, so the most important one that I do and I offer with my my client partners is, we call it Team View, and it has 42 questions. It doesn't take long to go through.
Okay.
42 questions, but we actually ask them twice where you are now and where you ought to be as a team. And it's just a 1 to 7 scale. So it takes about 10 minutes to go through. And you say something like, we communicate well as a team. Well, I think we're a 5, but we should be a 7. So that's a 2-point gap. You look at the aggregate across everybody on the team, and now you can see where your gaps are. The best part about something like that is the team is the one that's determining what the benchmark is. So as a team, if I think that we should be at a 6.5 and we're at 4.2, we're saying as a team, we need to close that gap. And then I sit down with those leaders, and we go, and the team, and we go over how can we close the important gaps across these 42 items? How can we close just 3? Let's just focus on 3. How can we close them? Putting a goal, action steps, and a measurable outcome, and then remeasure them in a year. It is the way to increase performance, to increase employee engagement, create a better culture. But again, it all comes down to, are you actually following up on the action steps you said you were going to do?
Follow-up is the key, is what I'm hearing from you, plus what we've all known all along, right? Sometimes we have to tell people what we've done so that they know it's been taken care of, or we just have to make sure they've done what needs to be done, not in a micromanaging way, yet in a follow-up sort of way for accountability that comes with it.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So Scott, let's wrap this up. Again, we're going to put that link in our Facebook group, folks, so you can get that there. You can find, you said you're just Scott Whiteford on LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn. But
Okay.
I am going to also, after we get done with this, follow We Make Give on Facebook. So if the listeners haven't, now's your time. Join me.
So come on into the group, the Win Make Give Facebook group, where we always continue the conversations after the podcast. And Scott will be there. So when I post that, I will tag him. He will be watching to make sure that we have that post there for each and every one of you, and any follow-up questions, conversations that you guys have when this episode airs. Scott, last thoughts. Okay, give me your. I don't care if it's you repeat something we said. I don't care if it's something that's sitting in your brain that I didn't ask the right question to trigger out of you yet. I want to hear your last thought, and bonus points if it can really annoy Bob, because there's a basketball analogy that you can tie to it.
Yeah, well, that part's easy. So I'm happy to annoy Bob. I hope he listens to this and reaches out. But so I think that the most important piece that I can leave folks with is the value of truly understanding the strengths that you have on your team and what your strengths are and how to utilize those. If you're not assessing that, you're not going to be successful. Instead, you're going to have Steph Curry playing at center, Shaquille O'Neal playing at point guard, and you're going to have it all wound up in the wrong way. So if you're not doing that, I encourage you to do that. You can help build your culture. You can help increase the value of your mission, vision, and values.
I love it. I appreciate it. And I thank you for bringing back that basketball analogy. Audience, even if you didn't understand it, Bob did, right? So that was the whole point of it. Folks, you can find him on LinkedIn. That's the best place to find him. Scott's also going to join us in our Facebook group. So you can always go in there and look for him and send him a message. And we'll tag him in the post when we put up the assessment link for you to all go learn a little bit more about your strengths. Scott, on behalf of Bob, Ben, Dave behind the scenes, we appreciate you coming and joining and sharing with our audience today.
All right. Well, thank you, Chad. It was a pleasure to be here.
All right, audience, as you know, we've pushed the Facebook group enough. There's no reason you shouldn't be there. You know, if you didn't take the wealth series that we just wrapped up not too long ago, you can always go back to winmakegive.com/wealth. You can go through the 17-step program that's going to help change your financial situation from where you are to where you want to be. We are here to help you guys. We've got some great episodes lined up in the near future, so make sure you're checking out Win, Make, Give and all of the podcasts in the Win, Make, Give network. Until our next episode, as always, do good.